in order to avoid thermal shocks when we start the pumps at just T-minus 2 seconds, and it helps us light the Merlin engines. Also, we're loading helium into storage vessels on the first and second stages. During flight, we pass this cold helium through heat exchangers on our Merlin engines. The heat of the gas generator exhaust warms this cold helium and expands it. This expanded helium gas is used to fill the empty volume in our fuel tanks created by the engine pumps pulling propellant out of the first stage. Think of it like your car. We use gravity on a car to keep all the fuel near the bottom of the tank. Here in space, we need helium to push all that fuel towards our turbo pumps. Now, let's take a moment to learn a bit more about our payload today. Weighing in at approximately 3.5 tons, the Türksat 5A satellite provides roughly 10 kilowatts of power. By way of its high reliability and design, this fifth-generation satellite will serve as the fleet's first satellite to operate under an electric propulsion system. And as I mentioned earlier, the Türksat 5A communications satellite was designed by our customer Airbus to provide television services and improve broadband data networks to service areas covering Turkey, Europe, the Middle East, North, Central, West, and South Africa, as well as the Mediterranean, Aegean, and Black Seas. The satellite is scheduled to become fully operational sometime in the second quarter of this year. Now let's take a moment to learn more about what makes this communications satellite so unique.
With its satellite fleet, Türksat focuses on rising values and technologies in satellite communication. Türksat is an alliance of values that opens doors to the world and inspires communication, with its reliable and expert staff investing in the knowledge of the future. We are in an age where information is instantly shared. Our expectations are rapidly changing. Technology is leading us to new experiences. we proudly proceed on a path illuminated by the information that makes our lives meaningful in the age of communication. While new experiences inspire great ideas, Türksat of the future invites you to be a part of this moment. Türksat, space age in communications.
Mission Control, we have liftoff.
We're just about 4.5 minutes from liftoff. Shortly, the transporter erector is going to retract to its pre-launch position. We may see in a few seconds here the arms cradling right under those fairings. Watch those open up. What's going to happen is that TE is going to retract about 2 degrees from the rocket from vertical. And you can see right now those arms are opening up just slightly. In a few seconds, you'll see those arms back off as the TE retracts. And it's just, those 2 degrees is just a little bit of movement, but it's enough to clear the rocket to allow it to leave the pad. At liftoff, it's going to move to a position 45 degrees from the rocket. And you can see it's starting to retract a little slowly there. First stage fuel loading is complete, and we're currently awaiting for the first stage liquid oxygen loading to complete. And shortly after that, at about T-minus 2 minutes, the second stage's LOX will also complete. One final big milestone before liftoff. You're going to hear the announcement that Falcon 9 is in startup mode. This announcement means that the rocket's own internal computers are now controlling the launch countdown on the Falcon 9. Once the engines are confirmed to be at full power, the flight computer, which is located on the second stage, will command the ground hold downs to release the rocket right at T-minus 0. The satellite team continues to monitor the status and health of the Türksat 5A payload located inside the fairing on the top of the second stage. All systems are go on the satellite. In terms of range and weather, currently everything appears to be on track for an on-time launch. The range is green. We've been monitoring weather. The only primary concern we have is the cumulus cloud, thick cloud rule. But right now, conditions are looking favorable. The percent of violation is 30%. That means there's only a 30% chance of us postponing liftoff. So things are looking good. If for some reason we have a call on today's launch, we may be able to begin again within this launch window tonight. But we do have a similar 4-hour backup opportunity scheduled for tomorrow evening around the same time. But for now, all systems continue to be go for an on-time liftoff at 9:15 p.m. Eastern Time. At this time, the LOX loading is complete. It just finished on the second stage, and that is the last milestone for propellant loading prior to liftoff. You're going to start seeing a buildup of white clouds emanating from the Falcon 9. That's perfectly normal. That's that excess liquid oxygen boiling when it's exposed to the ambient temperature of the air around the Falcon 9 fuselage.
Ground gas closeouts.
The first and second stage are beginning to pressurize for launch, and we're about 15 seconds away from that startup mode call out.
Flight computer has entered startup.
We have confirmation of startup. We're just waiting for launch director's go for launch call out.
Türksat 5A, Falcon 9, LDs go for launch.
And you've heard it, we're 30 seconds away. All systems are go for an on-time launch of Falcon 9 with the Türksat 5A satellite, our first launch for this year.
30 seconds. T-minus 15 seconds. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Ignition. And liftoff.
Stage 1 chamber pressures are nominal. The vehicle is pitching downrange.
We're now 30 seconds into flight on the Falcon 9. All engines are running at full power. We are preparing to enter through our first major milestone after liftoff, max Q. It's going to occur at T plus 1 minute 12 seconds. We're going to throttle those engines down. We've confirmed nominal status from the avionics team. Next, max Q. That's when the vehicle experiences the greatest amount of dynamic pressure. We throttle those engines down, and afterwards we throttle them back up to keep dynamic pressures below a certain level.
Is supersonic. Max Q.
We've successfully crossed the max Q threshold. Everything is looking good with the first stage's trajectory. Next, we're going to start our MVAC chill. This is going to help us prepare for the next 3 major events. They occur one after another. The first one, those 9 Merlin 1D engines are going to cut off. That's known as MECO, or main engine cutoff. Right after that, the first and second stage will separate, and then the Merlin vacuum engine on the second stage will turn on. That's known as SES-1. About 15 seconds away from throttling down those Merlin 1D engines, you'll start to see that visual change in that plume you see on the screen.
Main engine cutoff. Stage separation confirmed.
All right, all good news here. We had successful main engine cutoff, stage separation, and second engine start 1. Our next milestone is fairing deployment. Those 2 fairing halves on the top of the second stage are no longer needed, and we'll jettison them to help expose the Türksat 5A satellite to space and attempt to recover those later on.
Second stage is on a nominal trajectory. Fairing separation confirmed.
And you saw there, we just jettisoned our 2 fairing halves. It's our first good view of Türksat 5A. It's now exposed to space, and those 2 fairing halves are heading back down to sea level. For those of you just joining, we're 4 minutes into flight on today's mission of carrying the Türksat 5A satellite to its intended orbit on the Falcon 9. We're currently in the first of 2 planned MVAC burns. That's what you see on your screen currently. Not pictured here currently, but that's after stage separation. The first stage, we're attempting to recover it. Its velocity at separation was about 2,200 meters per second, or 5,000 miles per hour. Once the separation occurs, the first stage is still moving at such a high velocity, it continues to raise its altitude as it approaches its apogee, and then it will coast down a couple minutes before it starts its return back to Earth. Up next, what you'll hopefully see is the first stage's entry burn. This is the first major milestone for first stage recovery. For entry burn, we're going to relight the center of those 9 Merlin engines. It's actually engine number 9. And partway through this transition, we then ignite 2 more engines, engine 1 and engine 5, which means we have 3 total M1D engines helping slow down the vehicle as it passes into the Earth's increasingly thickening atmosphere. That burn will last about 30 seconds, and we're just about a minute away from that. And also not pictured here, those 2 fairing halves are making their way down. It'll take a lot longer than it will for the first stage, but we will attempt to recover those later on in the evening.
Expected loss of signal, Cape.
First stage is now less than 100 kilometers above sea level, continuing to make its way down. Just 10 seconds away from entry burn. As you watch this here, watch that exhaust expand as it goes from 1 engine to 3 engines. It'll sort of elongate.
Stage 1 entry burn startup.
Entry burn has begun. All 3 engines are running currently.
Stage 1 entry burn shut down.
You heard it, you saw it. Entry burn has shut down. Next, a couple milestones happening back to back. On the second stage on your screen, we're going to turn off that MBAC engine. It's known as SECO 1, or second engine cutoff 1. And right after that milestone, we're going to start our final first stage burn, the landing burn, hopefully culminating with a 4th landing of this particular first stage. Going back to SECO, we shut down the MBAC, and after that period, we actually allow the second stage to coast. This event preserves the fuel until we need it for that final burn, second engine start number 2, and it takes us to our targeted orbit for today's satellite deploy. We're about 30 seconds away from SECO 1, and after that, only about 30 more seconds until we hopefully have a nice view of the first stage touching down on our Just Read the Instructions autonomous drone ship.
Stage 2 FTS is saved.
Stage 1 landing burn start.
Our landing burn has started. Our second engine is also cut off, as you can see. We're just awaiting confirmation of good orbital insertion. And back on sea level, you can see here the drone ship. We have confirmation of good orbit on the second stage, and looks like we have a good landing on the drone ship as well. This is SpaceX's 71st successful first stage recovery. This particular booster's 4th successful recovery, getting ready for its 5th flight in the future. That's our secondary mission, vehicle reusability, but our primary mission is not yet complete. The second stage vehicle has now entered its first coast phase and will last about 18 minutes. After that, we're going to light that MBAC engine for a second time shortly after at about T plus 26 minutes, 51 seconds. For those of you interested in keeping an eye on where that second stage is throughout the coast phase, you can follow along with our animation for the next 18 minutes. Otherwise, we'll see you back here at T plus 25 minutes. Welcome back again to our launch coverage of the Türksat 5A mission. One quick note, we're actually not spinning the second stage of this mission, but unfortunately I can confirm we had a good orbit after our second engine start, which is great news. If you're just joining us, we have one more major milestone coming up in about 10 seconds. That's the deployment of the Türksat 5A satellite.
Payload deploy confirms.
And you can see it. We have confirmation of successful payload separation of the Türksat 5A satellite, and that will now bring today's webcast coverage to a close. Before we go, we really want to thank Airbus, our customer, for entrusting us with the Türksat 5A satellite. This mission marked the 4th launch and landing for this Falcon 9 booster. It was also SpaceX's 71st successful booster landing, as well as SpaceX's 50th time for flying a reflown booster. Also, it's our first launch for 2021. To the range and the FAA, we appreciate having your support and acceptance for today's mission. And to all of our viewers, you, as always, thank you for tuning in, and have a great evening.